Hello, and today I'm going to show you how to make cranberry white chocolate chunk cookies. So the purpose of us making this recipe is that you learn how to measure in a bake shop. So your recipe, when you take a look at it, is written in a way that it's a weighted amount, which means you would use a scale, which you should have reviewed in your bake shop measurement document. And then if you don't use the scale, it also has you using what's called a volume measurement, which would be dry measuring cups, measuring spoons, or liquid measuring cup, depending on the unit. Okay, so we're going to be take the first part of this demo to talk about the measurement aspect. So first off, if you use a scale, and you'll see this on your recipe, the unit is in either ounces, pounds, grams. So that is what you would see when you're using a scale. So here is what we call a digital scale. Okay, so this is one of three. So this is a digital scale. This goes up to 2 pounds. If you were in a bake shop, they would have huge digital scales like this that go up to multiple pounds. So they sell different sizes. There's also a portion scale, and then a balance scale. Okay, so you saw those other two types of scales in your bake shop notes. Those are the variations, but we use a digital scale, so this is what it looks like. So to use a digital scale, you turn it on, okay? And then here it lets you change the unit. And I don't know if you can completely see, but right now we have the unit as ounces, but I could change it to milliliters. I could change it to grams, pounds. This is pounds and ounces if I was doing like a large amount, and then back to just ounces. Okay, so if I'm going to measure something, I would put some type of holder placement on my scale, and you can see it's measuring my bowl. Okay, so I am going to what's called zero this out. So on this scale, zero out means tear. So I just clear it, and then it goes back to zero. Okay, so you can see I zeroed out my scale. Okay, so now if I'm going to measure, 1 ounce of something, so say I'm going to measure an ounce of salt. Okay, I'm going to take my salt, and I'm going to show you how to do some of the ingredients for this. I would start pouring. Oh, and it went back up. So I'm going to zero it out. Yep, we're good. All right, so say I'm going to do an ounce of salt. I see how it says 0.32, 0.28, it went down. I want to say 1.0, okay? So I would just keep going until it says 1.0. So this is going to take, because I'm new, say you're new to this, so you can see it says 1.02. My scale is off by 0.02, so it's 1 ounce, okay? Say I need 1.5 ounces, then I would keep going until it says 1.5. All right. So I have a little too much. So I would take that out. And again, mine's off by 0.02. So 1.5. And then I have my complete amount of salt. Okay. So that's using a scale. If you are a hybrid student, you are going to be practicing with the scale at school. If you have a scale at your house, I strongly encourage you to use it, because if we were doing this in the normal school year, we would be having you measure with a scale, because that's how we measure a lot of things for Giavicino, because that's how they do it in a true bake shop when they're making large products, okay? If you are at home and you don't have a scale, totally fine, no problem. We have the volume measurements. So volume is defined as the amount of space that an ingredient takes up. The units for volume measurements are going to be, 1 cup, half cup, quarter cup. That's a volume measurement. So if I need a half cup of oats, okay, so if I need a half cup of oats, I would open up my oats and I would measure a half cup. And the amount of space that the oats are taking up is equivalent to a half cup, which is the volume of it. All right. So if you only have these at home, totally fine. The reason why a bake shop uses a scale, it's the most precise. So because when I dig into my oats, I'm going to go like this, and it might not always be accurate each time I do it. where when I do it with the scale, it's always going to be accurate, always. As long as I'm using the same scale and yours isn't off, mine's a little off, but you get the idea. Also, volume measurement is when you use measuring spoons. So our measurements, some of them for you, for the weighted ones using a scale, they still use this because it's such a small amount that it wouldn't register on the scale. So we still had you use some of the teaspoon, little t, and less than that. All right. So that is our measurement. So we have our volume measurements, which is using dry measuring cups and measuring spoons. If you're using a liquid ingredient, you would use your liquid measuring cup, which has ounces. That's liquid ounces, fluid ounces, okay? And then it has the cups on the other side, okay? So we're not using a large amount of liquid in this, so we would not be using this, but this is still a volume measurement because it's the amount of space that the liquid would take up, but that would be fluid ounces. Okay, so just to explain that to you. All right, so that's using a scale. So now we're going to measure for our cranberry white chocolate chunk cookies. So in this recipe, this is, it's kind of like an oatmeal cookie, but instead of adding raisins, we're adding white chocolate chips and dried cranberries. Okay, so as I'm making this, I'll talk about some modifications for you. All right, so when you're measuring at school with a scale, you can kind of combine some ingredients. And if you're measuring at home, you can do the same exact thing. I'm going to kind of explain it from that perspective. All right. So I'm going to put my bowl on here and I've already pretty much measured, but I'm going to kind of explain what I would do if I was using the dry measuring cups or if I was using a scale. Okay. And then I'll also be mixing and whatnot along the way. Okay. So here is my bowl and there is my scale. So I'm going to turn that on. Zero it out, turned it off. Make sure I am in ounces. So the first three ingredients are shortening, brown sugar, and granulated sugar, okay? So in baking, okay, a lot of recipes are written, the ingredients are in the order that they are added. So then when I read my directions, okay, cream the shortening and sugars until light and fluffy, okay? So those first three ingredients, they're going to be combined together, okay? So the first ingredient is shortening. Shortening is a fat. A fat ingredient adds richness, tenderness, and flavor to a baked product. So we're using shortening. It gives a nice chew. Some other fats that you use in cookies would be margarine or butter, but we're going to be using shortening. So this, when you measure this, you need 1.5 ounces. So here is my shortening. All right. And I've already measured it, but let's check my work. Yep. 1.5. Remember, my scale is off by 0.02. So that's why it's registering as 1.52, but it's 1.5. Okay. If you're unsure when you're at school, just check with your teacher. If you are measuring this at home, you would be using tablespoons. Okay. Tablespoons is the big T, okay? It's the biggest measuring spoon that you have. So you would do this 3 times, okay? Then the next thing you're going to add is 3 ounces of brown sugar. So, 1.5 ounces of brown sugar, 3 tablespoons if you are at home. So 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. If you're at school, you're doing, again, 1.5 ounces. So you can see I already have the shortening in there, but I want to add this and just check my work. So I can zero it out again. And then it's like nothing. So it's just going to measure my brown sugar. Okay. So there are multiple types of sugar. Okay. Brown sugar is one, granulated sugar, another sugar we're using, powdered sugar that you'll see, honey, corn syrup. Those are all types of sugar. We're using brown sugar, which is granulated sugar with molasses added. That is going to add a little bit of chewiness to your cookie. And then we're also adding granulated sugar. That's just regular white sugar. And that's going to give a little bit more crispiness and it's going to help with browning. Okay. So another little perspective on that. When you have a combination of brown sugar and white sugar in a cookie, it's going to have that nice chew in the center from the brown sugar because of the molasses that's in the brown sugar. And then it's also going to be nice and crispy on the outside because of the white sugar. And it's going to have a nice golden brown color also because of this white sugar, right? So I need, again, 1.5 ounces. So I'm just going to zero it out again. All right, and I'm going to add my granulated sugar. All right, and I was a little off on that one. Look, oh, yeah, I was a little off. So when that happens, not a big deal. You're just going to sprinkle a little bit more in there, which I am doing right now, and you are good to go. All right, so I have that. All right, so to that, my first 3 ingredients, I am going to take a rubber scraper and I am going to stir it. All right. So now what I'm doing is I am creaming my fat and my sugars together. So I am mixing this by hand. You can do this with a kitchen mixer or a hand mixer, but honestly, it's not that many ingredients that it's almost easier to just do it by hand than to bring that out. If you want to, by all means, go for it. But there's not that many ingredients that you can easily cream this by hand. So this is a technique when you combine a fat and sugars together. It's called creaming. So as you can see, I am just moving my bowl. It's more comfortable, ergonomically comfortable for me as the baker. And I take my rubber scraper. You could also use a wooden spoon. And you just cream this together. All right. And then we'll be right back and we'll continue making this.